Jen, kay Alessandra. Pakilala naman kayo and tell me the highlight of your week. So if you're a student, let me know what university you're from. Pag professional naman, type your career in the chat box. And I would also like to greet din our FB Live viewers. Hello po sa ating mga FB Live viewers. Kasama na dyan si Sir Rafi. Hello, Sir Rafi. So comment nyo rin, pakilala rin kayo, and don't forget to share the video sa inyong timeline. So if you're new here, good afternoon from University of Makati. Hello, Ariel. Ayan, yung week daw ni Jericho has been pretty great so far. Ayan, ako rin. Ayan. So just keep it coming, you know. And if you're new here, Community Ignite series are short episodes. That's every Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m., you know, and it's where we bring people, product, and purpose all together. So you as a young IT professional, or, you know, early in your career, or young at art, or, you know, just starting in the tech industry, you will definitely benefit from this series, especially that this is co-presented by Amazon Web Services and AWS Club Pilipinas. And this event is all for free and also comes with an e-certificate. So hello, Jessa from Data Center College of the Philippines. Hello, Carl from BS Infotech 3B ng University of Northern Philippines. Hello din kay Mary from USTSP. Hello then kay Mr. Roniel from New Era. So in the previous episode, the topic was all about getting started with AWS CDK. And in case you missed it, don't worry, because you can check all about it on our social media accounts. So make sure to follow our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn to stay updated. Search nyo lang AWS Club Pilipinas, or you can scan the QR code around your screen. I don't know where it is, but I'm pretty sure it's there. So going back ulit no sa ating section, hello again to our 192 participants here in Zoom, and also to our FB Live viewers. Again, no, the question for tonight is, what was the highlight of your week? So hello, good afternoon kay Aiden, kay Ralph. Ayan, si Ralph ang ating top attendee ng February. Hello rin, Hans from UST. Hello, Denise from Occidental Mindoro. So kumusta naman yung week nyo, right? And I would like to share mine. You know, I would like to share my highlight of the week. Kasi itong news na to, kayo talaga yung unang pumasok sa isip ko na, oh my gosh, na-receive ko tong news na to, gusto ko agad sabihin sa inyo. And the news is, na-accept ako as an AWS Community Builder. So I'm going to join the AWS Community Builder program. So who knows, diba? Baka next time, hindi lang ako yung host, kundi ako na rin ang magiging speaker for, you know, a CIS episode. Ayan. So speaking of being a guest for Community Ignite series episodes, I know na excited na magbigay ng talking ating speaker. Kaya naman, ito na siya. So, sino kaya speaker natin for tonight? Again, good evening kay Evito and Piolo. Wow, si Piolo Pascual Char. Hello, Piolo from University of Caloocan. Ayan. So, ang speaker natin for tonight is the Chief Technology Officer of NewWorks Interactive Labs Incorporated. He previously served as the CTO of 3 Australian-owned companies and also served as a director for software development and engineering for multiple e-commerce startups in the past, which allowed him to be more effective as a leader. So he is also an AWS machine learning hero. So siya yung nakita nyo kanina sa AVP, no? Sa last AVP natin. And he has been sharing his knowledge in several international conferences to discuss practical strategies on machine learning, engineering, security, and management. So he is also the author of the book called Machine Learning with Amazon SageMaker Cookbook. So here to present about vulnerability management service and its benefits in a single click is Sir Joshua Arvin Lat. So let's give him a big round of positive reaction, guys. Ayan, hello Sir Joshua, how are you tonight? Kamusta naman po ang March niyo so far?
Okay naman. Thank you for having me here. Very busy yung March and Feb. So yeah, March na pala.
All right, sir, take it away po.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll share my screen and then ayun, found it. Right, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah. Yep, we can see it na po.
Okay, so let's start. So again, we have a very important topic, which is on security. And the topic for today is on automated vulnerability management with Amazon Inspector. So I'll quickly introduce myself. So thank you again for introducing me earlier. So I am the Chief Technology Officer of NewWorks Interactive Labs. I'm also an AWS Machine Learning Hero. and I'm the author of the book Machine Learning with Amazon SageMaker Cookbook. So in the past, I've also been invited to update the certification exams. So as you can see here on the upper right side, I was given a mug because I was able to help update the certification exams globally being used by different professionals of AWS. And yes, I wrote this book last year. So this book was published last year. That's about 700 pages. So if you guys want to learn about machine learning and how to perform machine learning experiments and deployments in the AWS cloud, then feel free to check out this book. All right, so enough about myself and enough about the book. Let's talk about security. So security is a tricky topic. A lot of us, even if we're already working in the IT industry for, let's say, 5 to 10 years, security remains to be a very complex topic. For one thing, it continues to evolve. And at the same time, the best practices may not necessarily be the most the most practical use of your time, especially if these best practices and guidelines are not really analyzed and validated. So what do I mean by that? Usually when we try to secure our systems, we usually try to just accept the facts as it is. So let's say that, okay, let's practice secure coding. But how do you really verify if your system is secure? The only way for us to know if a system is secure is by attacking it. So you can only defend if you're able to attack a system. It's similar to automated testing, where you write code and then you test it. And then to make testing easier, or at least to make testing more scalable, then you have automated tests. So same with security. Instead of us just trying to accept that the system is secure, we test if a system is secure. And by taking a step back, we are able to see that, okay, why are we doing this? We're trying to simulate how an attacker attacks the system. So there's something called the cybersecurity attack chain. So the cybersecurity attack chain is basically how a malicious actor is able to compromise and penetrate an existing system using different tools and using different attacks. So it may not involve just a single attack. It may involve multiple attacks in sequence. Some attacks may fail, some attacks may succeed, but the overall goal of an attacker is to perform an action which is not supposed to be performed in that system. For example, if the hacker is able to steal the passwords of the user, then that's one goal. The other possible thing that the hacker could do is that hacker could change and modify the database records directly without having to go to the web app. So let's say that there's a web application tier and then there's a database tier. If the web application tier gets compromised, then that hacker may be able to penetrate further and be able to attack the database tier also. So again, there are different ways to attack a system, but a trained security professional would know which one to secure first. So let's have a quick example here. So here we have a virtual private cloud. We have a network. So we have here a public subnet and we have here a private subnet. And in the public subnet, we have a Cloud9 control instance. So if you have never used Cloud9, just think of this instance as a server hosted in a public subnet. A public subnet is just a layer in the network which is accessible from everywhere else. So even if you don't register it in your DNS configuration, it can still be attacked. That's why it's important for us to know which ones are accessible publicly, because if you have something like this, definitely the ones which should be tagged as high risk are the instances inside the public subnet. The ones in the private subnet cannot easily be attacked unless that an attacker attacks something else first before trying to access what's inside the private subnet. For example, if the instances in the public subnet can access the databases using, let's say, security group configuration, then an attacker will attack what's in the public subnet and then try to attack the private subnet next. So again, if you are able to secure what's in the public subnet, then we'll be able to improve the security of this overall system. So now, if you think about it, why are systems more or less prone to attacks? For one thing, security and compliance are usually deprioritized. What do I mean by that? So let's say that you are a business, that you are part of a business. You started your own business. You may be the CEO, the CTO, the tech manager, and so on. Before you focus on the security of your system, you would probably focus first on the short-term financial objectives and the long-term financial objectives. And of course, you want to make your clients and customers happy. So as you can see here, compliance would be tagged as low because there's nothing to secure if there's no business. So of course, majority of the resources of the company will be allocated to something uh, which would directly influence revenue generation. That's why security and compliance would always be the prioritized unless that there's someone really taking care of it. So that said, this becomes a function of time, meaning given that everything is limited, resources are limited, it's about being able to do something in the shortest time possible. So let's say that you are able to build a system for 3 months. How much time do you need to secure it? And depending on the time, that's how much you're going to spend on the security and compliance aspect of your business. So that said, again, there is no perfectly secure system. It's more of like, how much time do you have to secure a system? How much time would it take for an attacker to attack and compromise your system? So again, everything is a function of time, both securing and attacking on the attacking aspects. Again, related to the time concept, there's also something called the feedback loop. So what do I mean by feedback loop? So when you're developing a system, the traditional way of securing a system would involve a development team completing a system first for 4 months, and then that build or that system would then be tested by a team of security specialists. So after 4 months, your system would be tested by, let's say, 4 or 5 people, and they will try to look for vulnerabilities and exploits. And then after the reports have been generated, and that's the time where your development team would then fix and patch the systems. So what's the problem here? The problem here is that usually the issues discovered by the security team would require fixes that may take 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or maybe even longer. If you found a flaw or a bug in your application, sometimes you will not be able to fix it within the next day. And if the deadline is next week and the bugs can be fixed in, let's say, 1 month, then most of the time, the bugs are just deprioritized so that they can prioritize the deployment. So if you are able to reduce and shorten the feedback loop, so let's say that the developer pushes code and then the security reports are generated every week, for example, that's much better than generating a security report after 3 months, because the changes performed during the first week can easily be tested and verified if those changes are secure. So again, the shorter and the smaller the feedback loop is, the better. That's why some teams, especially those that have mature IT processes, they are able to implement something like a DevSecOps pipeline. So feel free to check that out. So there's something called a DevOps pipeline. There's also something called a DevSecOps pipeline where the security tests are included, and it would be the security aspect is shifted to the left part, meaning it's as close as possible to the left side, as you can see here in the screen. So if you push the code, you want your security test to run. And then if you want to deploy something, of course, all the vulnerabilities need to be analyzed and processed first before being processed by, let's say, a manager who will just perform the manual approval step, which would then be the prerequisite for the actual deployment. So again, we include security at the middle or maybe near the left side instead of it being at the last part where it's hard to fix the vulnerabilities and issues found. Yeah. So again, there's a lot of things to discuss. And if all you have is a hammer, everything becomes a nail. So it's about identifying which tools are familiar to you and which tools are not yet familiar to you. And when you are to use tools, whether they're development tools or security tools or management tools, it's important for you guys to assess the tools first before choosing and using things in a production scale. Because even if you say that, okay, we can easily change this after 2 months, the challenge there is that it takes time and effort to replace an existing tool with another one, especially if you feel that it's not working for you. So make sure to research first before finalizing the plans because you don't want to waste money. So that said, now that we have a good idea of how security looks like in the real world, let's now talk about automated vulnerability management. So what's automated vulnerability management? So traditionally, the tools when it comes to vulnerability assessments involve a scanner and a report generator. So what happens there is that the scanner is invoked or triggered, let's say once every 2 weeks manually. It may be scheduled. It can be scheduled also. However, that still requires a human to trigger that scan. So let's say that you have a system, a WordPress site, and you might be using a really old WordPress version, and you might be using some plugins which may have vulnerabilities. So after you have completed your website, you then host it in, let's say, a server, and then you configure your vulnerability scanner to scan that system. So you wait for 12 hours to 24 hours, and then your scanner would then generate a report. The report gets processed, and then your team fixes the vulnerabilities, or you try to upgrade certain libraries or packages. So what's the problem there? The problem there is that you still need to manually run the vulnerability assessment scanners, and processing the reports takes time also, and you might need a different person for it. Usually developers are not able to process security reports because it's most likely the job of another person. Developers and engineers focus on making sure that the code quality is good, that there's automated tests, and so on. So again, if you are a developer who's able to take care of the security of your application, then that's super good because it's rare nowadays to find developers who can do both. So that said, how can we improve the process? We can improve the process by using an automated vulnerability management tool. And how would that work? So for example, Amazon Inspector, the newer version, works by just letting it work by itself since it's automated. So you have a server, you push code or you perform some changes, and then without you doing anything, the tool called Amazon Inspector runs automatically and updates the reported set of vulnerabilities. And the good thing there is that the developers or the engineers do not need to configure or manually invoke Amazon Inspector. And that's why it's called an automated vulnerability management tool. So let's say that initially, after the first run, you have, let's say, 60 vulnerabilities. And then your developers and engineers decided to spend 3 days fixing the vulnerabilities and bugs and issues. And then they update the server. So next, Amazon Inspector runs. And then after 2 hours, you'll see that instead of 60 vulnerabilities, it became 19. So you know that the changes that you've deployed and the configuration changes you performed in that server did work because yeah, without requiring another person to validate things for you, that tool automatically performed the scan and updated the reported vulnerabilities as you can see here in the screen. So pretty cool. So if what I've explained is a bit confusing, do not worry, as we will dive deep more on how this is set up and how this works. At the same time, it's not limited to servers only. You can use Amazon Inspector with container images. So when you're using containerization technologies, let's say Docker, you're able to package your processes and your application inside containers, which can easily, let's say, be duplicated, or which easily can be relaunched by creating a new container from existing container images. So what happens here is that before deploying that container to production, you can just push your changes inside a container repository, and then the scanner would automatically scan that repository with the images, and the vulnerabilities found will be reported as well. And the cool thing there is that it works pretty much the same way. And there's nothing for the developers and engineers to do, because the scanners automatically just scan the container images being pushed. And container images are technically the versions of what you're deploying into production. So again, it works in servers, EC2 instances, and Amazon Inspector works also with container images. So let's start first by talking about how to use Amazon Inspector with container images. So of course, me explaining that Amazon Inspector is cool, that's the first part. The next part is how to install, because of course, it will not work right away. You need to enable it, you need to configure it, and you need to test it. In the next couple of slides, we will show you how it's done. So again, there's going to be two parts. The first part is on container images, and then the second part would be on the servers. So let's talk about container images first. Let's say we have something like this. If you look at the right side, critical findings, you will see here that in the ECR container, there were 50 critical vulnerabilities found out of the 351 total findings, which may include lower priority vulnerabilities. So before proceeding to the next slide, you'll probably ask me, what's a vulnerability? A vulnerability is a weakness. It may or may not be exploitable, but it's a sign of weakness. So of course, even if the vulnerabilities are displayed here, a penetration tester or a security analyst or a security manager still needs to verify if a vulnerability is exploitable. So again, there are different tools for that. If you're familiar with Metasploit, if you're familiar with the different tools inside Kali Linux, then you may be able to validate existing vulnerabilities. So here, what we have here is what your dashboard should look like if Amazon Inspector works correctly. So how do we set this up? It's very simple. So first, let's try to push a sample container called vulnerable web application. So in the past, 10 years ago, there's this DVWA. And then when the containerization movement was finally accepted globally, then the security professionals decided to create container image versions of that vulnerable web application. So again, if you're trying to learn about penetration testing, security analysis, vulnerability management, you'll be able to train yourself by creating your own laboratory. And inside your own laboratory, you may want to download vulnerable web applications so that you can experiment and perform penetration testing yourselves. So web DVWA, the vulnerable web application, has a container image, and we push it in Amazon ECR. Amazon ECR is the elastic, that's the container repository. So it's basically just a container of container images. So you push it here. So what happens next is, if you enable Amazon Inspector, it will automatically scan the container images there. So as you can see, we literally just pushed it here. We just push it here in ECR. And then in the next slide, you'll see, oh, there are a lot of vulnerabilities found by Amazon Inspector. So that's pretty cool, because you do not need to manually invoke a scan and to manage the reports yourself. Amazon Inspector would help scan these things automatically once it's properly configured and set up. So what's the next step here? Of course, once you've found 100 plus findings, what do you do with it? So the first step here is not to be overwhelmed. The first step here is to process these vulnerabilities one vulnerability at a time, one row at a time. And you do not need to process everything, especially if you're short in time. Again, time will be a factor. And what you need to do is check if each vulnerability is something you need to take care of. Because some vulnerabilities here may be false positives. False positives meaning, okay, there's a warning. What do I do with it? Well, technically, it's not exploitable according to your security expert. So you just leave it as is. So you just move on to the next row and check if the other vulnerabilities are exploitable. So if it's exploitable, if your hacker can, let's say, perform an attack, invoke a reverse shell or something, and then your instance would be compromised and the data inside would be stolen, then that's something that you need to take care of. So if you're able to perform your patch and you push another container image, then Amazon Inspector should be able to detect that and remove that vulnerability from this list. So what other information would be provided by Amazon Inspector? So here, you can see here the details. So what's the severity? Oh, it's critical. So there are different severity levels. The higher the security level, the higher it should be in your list of things to process. There's also that vulnerability ID. Usually, the information can be found in a different database or in different website. So you should still check other websites for more information on how this vulnerability works and how a system can be attacked with that vulnerability. So again, it's not about, oh, it's critical. You need to process the vulnerability. And if you're seeing 100 reports, you really need to read each one. So once you're able to do things on a regular basis, I mean, processing these vulnerabilities should take a much shorter time. So this is one example. So you have here the National Vulnerability Database. You'll be able to see some details regarding this vulnerability. And you may need to look for other resources on how to perform the attack. So there are other security experts that create blog posts or even videos and demonstrate how to perform an attack using this vulnerability. So let's say that after running the scan, okay, the port is open, so it's exploitable. So you perform that exploit using some sort of package inside Metasploit, and then boom, you're able to access the server directly. So if you're able to perform that, then from a defensive end, you need to secure it also, as what I mentioned earlier. So that's pretty much it from the container image end. It's more on the concepts part first. It's not about, okay, how do you set it up? Getting it to work is easy. But being able to do the right thing after the reports have been generated, that's the most important thing. Because if you do not know what to do with these reports, then having an automated vulnerability management would be meaningless. So the next part, the last part of this presentation would be detecting and scanning EC2 instances for vulnerabilities. So there's a bit of similarity, but there are also set up differences, which we will see here. So if you were to launch a new EC2 instance and you have Amazon Inspector enabled, I believe by default, Amazon Inspector will not scan it right away. You will need to do something first before it gets registered, before it gets managed by Amazon Inspector. So if you have 10 instances, chances are those 10 instances need to be configured first before Amazon Inspector can be used to automatically generate reports for these servers or instances. So how do you do that? Actually, it's very simple. All you need to do is click the link. So you'll see something like this EC2 instance is not managed by SSM. Please follow these instructions to remediate the issue. So you click these instructions and you will see something like this. So what happens here is that there's going to be some sort of tool to assess what's wrong. So if it's not yet registered with Amazon Inspector, AWS has already provided a convenience tool to help you with the next steps. So all you need to do is specify, let's say, the instance ID, and then this tool would run and would give you the findings so that you can configure your instance and have it registered in Amazon Inspector. So here, as we can see here, this is the sample report generated. So first, what's reported here, although it's kind of small, you can see here that there are no VPC endpoints for SSM available. So you need to set that up. And you need to check all the other reports here. For example, no instance profile found for the instance. So of course, if these things are a bit confusing, do not worry because the steps are also in this report. For example, for no instance profile is found or attached, then you can just follow the steps in the link provided below. So the first step is to include and bind or link the IAM rule with the SSM managed instance core rule. And that rule should have this policy so that your server would be able to connect and do its job. Because what happens in Amazon Inspector is that using agentless using agents, you'll be able to install something inside the server so that the scans would be from inside, not from outside, which makes things quieter. If you were to use a different scanner, sometimes the scanners are noisy, which would affect the network infrastructure. Amazon Inspector relies on SSM, and SSM needs to be configured properly with your EC2 instances for it to work correctly. So if you do not understand any of that, just make sure that this IAM rule is properly configured with your EC2 instance. The next step here is to take care of the VPC endpoints. So VPC, again, that's your network infrastructure where you host your server. So before you can proceed, you also need to take care of the VPC endpoints. So with VPC endpoints, all you need to do is just click a bunch of buttons there and have this set up. So once you have these 3 VPC endpoints ready, which you'll probably be able to complete in, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes, then yeah, you'll just need to check again in Amazon Inspector, and you will see that instead of your server being tagged as a managed instance, you'll see there that it's already scanning. So pretty cool. So all you need to do would be to perform 2 or 3 things, make sure that your instance is managed by SSM, and there you go. Amazon Inspector will be scanning your server right away. So if you think that there are too many steps, oh, I need to do those 2 or 3 steps, it's just the first instance which is hard to configure. So once you need to have your other instances configured and managed by Amazon Inspector, you can reuse the resources that you've already created or provisioned or updated in your first instance and apply it to your other instances. And as you can see, instance 2 onwards can easily be managed by Amazon Inspector. So after 2 or 3 hours or shorter, depending on the results of the scan, you'll be able to see something like this. So if your server, let's say, makes use of Amazon Linux AMI, or maybe makes use of Ubuntu Linux AMI, you might have a report something like this. You have 0 critical vulnerabilities, you have 43 high vulnerabilities, and you have 71 medium tag vulnerabilities. So what do you do with this one? What you do with this one is, again, process things from high to low, meaning critical first for the high tag vulnerabilities, and then next the medium ones. So you need to read each one and check and assess if these ones are exploitable and something you need to worry about. And again, you need to read other sources and documents. You need to check if, okay, if I perform this patch, if I perform this action, would I be able to remediate this vulnerability? So that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. Amazon Inspector is able to support both container images and EC2 instances. Setting it up is easy. For container images, it's almost straightforward. It works almost right away. For EC2 instances, all you need to worry about would be setting up SSM and just including a bunch of VPC endpoints, and you just need to wait for your scan to complete. And after that, the next step there is to work with a security professional and assess each vulnerability from high prio to low prio. And after you have assessed and processed the vulnerabilities, you perform your patches, you perform your fixes, and then you need to run the scans again. Although in this case, since it's automated, if you update the server, the scans would automatically run, and you just need to check if the reported vulnerabilities decrease or if they disappear. So you repeat until you are able to reduce it to an acceptable number. Let's say you want to resolve all high severity and critical severity issues, and it's okay to have medium severity vulnerabilities. Then if that's your standard, then that's the time you stop. Otherwise, you list down all the vulnerabilities which were not processed because you need to report that to your CTO or to your chief security officer and explain why the team wasn't able to patch or perform the remediation fixes. Again, so that's pretty much it. Thank you again for listening to my talk and hope you learned something new. So yeah, back to you guys.
All right, thank you so much for that insightful talk, Sir Joshua. Napakaganda nga naman ng Amazon Inspector since it runs and updates automatically. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for the AWS Machine Learning Hero, so ask away. So I have gathered a lot of questions for tonight. So first is from Sir Jerv. So does it perform the vulnerability scanning prior to deployment, say for example, a stage in the CI or CD pipeline, or after it has been deployed to an environment?
Good question. So there are two versions of Amazon Inspector. The old one and the new one. It's just my internal tag. So I think it's Amazon Inspector Classic. So feel free to check that in the documentation. So Amazon Inspector Classic can be included in your pipeline because you can trigger it manually. You can use, let's say, Boto3, and you have a Lambda function which can utilize Boto3 to trigger the old version of Amazon Inspector. So if you have the engineering capabilities, then you can include it in your pipeline. Amazon Inspector, the new one, works differently. It has its own world. It has its own mind. So the first time that it gets installed, or the first time it gets enabled, if the resources get detected, then Amazon Inspector runs. If the resources are changed or modified, Amazon Inspector runs automatically without you having to trigger it. So yeah, so again, there are two versions. If you need a pipeline, then use the old one. Just take note that the old one may not be supported at some point in the future. So just check when it might get deprecated.
Alright. Napansin ko lang, sir, na napakaganda ng iyong mic. Sana yung mic ko rin, touchscreen lang din, no, if I need to mute. So a follow-up question again from Sir Jerv is, does Inspector have a feature where it can automatically roll back to the last secure version of the image?
A good question. Amazon Inspector is a tool which is focused on generating security reports and checking the vulnerabilities of a system. So the thing that you're asking for is the role or the job of a different tool. You will need to look for a different tool for that. You can combine it and connect it with Amazon Inspector. However, Amazon Inspector is limited to what it's supposed to do. So if you need something, let's say a deployment pipeline which automatically rolls back when you have a number of vulnerabilities detected, you can combine it with, let's say, the code pipeline and code build and code deploy services of AWS. And you have Lambda functions which help you customize the logic a bit and use it to extract reports from Amazon Inspector. So again, that's possible, but it's the job of a different service or tool.
Ayun, so another, Sir Jerv is asking for, to clarify daw po, does the newer AWS Inspector scan the EC2 instances, not the image repository? So, yun po yung
Yes, good question. It scans both. So again, in the presentation earlier, the new Amazon inspector is able to check for vulnerabilities from both instances and image repositories. So if you're already using ECR, you push your changes there, you push your container images there. And if you have enabled Amazon Inspector, then you would see that, okay, these are your container images, then these are the vulnerabilities for those container images.
All right. And another question from Iris. So from Amazon Inspector dashboard, you'll be able to see a list of unmanaged EC2 instances. And then another question is there a way to do batch modification of multiple EC2s to enable Amazon Inspector for them? So I will just chat this in the chat box kasi dalawa po yung kanyang question. Ayan po.
Yes. Okay, first question. Will you be able to see the list of unmanaged EC2 instances in Amazon Inspector dashboard? Yes. So in one of the slides that I've shared earlier, I shared, okay, these are, let's say, the 10 instances in this current region. And then let's say that 5 of those have already been installed or at least managed by Amazon Inspector. Then you'll see the other 5 not yet managed. In terms of doing batch modification of multiple EC2s, again, there are, I think, 2 or 3 steps before you can do it. If you can create a script that would assign the role to each of those EC2 instances, then that's the first part of your script. And then the second part would be making sure that the instances are inside the VPC and the subnets configured with the, what do you call that, the VPC endpoints. So as long as the instances are inside the VPC with the proper VPC configuration, the endpoint configuration, then plus the EC2 instance role, then yes, that would allow you to manage multiple EC2s all at the same time.
All right. And then a follow-up question from Iris is, so AWS does not have the script yet.
There's the script. There's a script or the tool to help you detect if it's what else you are missing. Like what I've shared earlier. But I believe that you still need to configure it with 1 or 2 steps. As far as I know, there's no automated script to do everything because it's best if you assess the setup first, because you might need to customize it depending on which VPC, right? You do not want your VPC to be, let's say you have 100 servers. You do not want all of them to be managed by Amazon Inspector all at the same time. It's still best to process it by bulk or by batch. If that is available, just make sure that you're able to take into account everything else. For example, VPC endpoints. How much would that cost? How much would Amazon Inspector cost if you have 50 servers compared to 10, right? So again, if that's possible, then go for it. But again, it's better to just add 1 instance at a time so that you're able to process things iteratively.
Okay, another question from Matthew is, once it is enabled, auto setup na daw po ba yun or required pa rin to be done manually, especially in unmanaged EC2?
Once it's enabled, it works right away for container images. For EC2, if the EC2 instances are not yet managed by Amazon Inspector, you need to perform 2 or 3 steps. The ones I've shared earlier. SSM role, VPC endpoints, and then maybe a few ones. So again, use the tool. There's a tool, if you run it, you'll see the 3 or 4 things that Inspector checks before it gets managed.
Alright, so while waiting for more questions, ako sir, meron po akong tanong na medyo I think it's just for beginners, pero napansin ko lang. So kanina may nakita ko like about severities, and what other severity can we expect po? Like, di ba may critical, like what does that mean? Meron po bang ibang parang mga categories na dapat to look out for? So I just want to know more about the severity kanina sa inyong PowerPoint.
Yes, good question. Okay. When processing security reports, the severity level is the first step. Okay, so if you are a security analyst, usually if there are so many reports, you try to process them by bulk first and try to check which ones are which ones are reported because of the usage of a certain tool. For example, you're using a certain PHP version or using a certain version of a framework. Fixing or upgrading the version of one tool may already like remove multiple reported vulnerabilities. But again, if you were to process it one at a time, how do you assess? You assess it by the impact if that vulnerability was exploited. So going back to the very first slide, cybersecurity attack chain. Which one can we consider a higher severity vulnerability? A vulnerability which just provides information. So for example, there's a vulnerability which just shares the jQuery version. Knowing the jQuery version may not necessarily be directly exploitable because there's no opening. It's just information gathering, right? But of course, it may end up being used in some sort of other attack chains. But by itself, it should be considered as low because an attacker cannot do anything because it's just displaying the version of jQuery. The other vulnerabilities, let's say, oh, the port is open, or let's say that you're using a very old version of the software and it's publicly accessible from outside world. And if an attack is performed on that server, and the attacker will be able to get full access. So there are two types of access kasi, privileged and not so privileged. So there's root access and then there's the not root access. If the configuration is performed correctly, then the attacker might end up just having less privileges, and that person may need to perform privilege escalation before that attacker can steal the other information or data inside your server. So in this second scenario, if the attacker is able to steal something from your computer or your servers, then it's something that we can call as higher risk, higher risk vulnerability. So it depends on the impact, especially if that vulnerability gets exploited. Yeah, good question.
Ayan. So I guess we can have this last question from again Iris. So follow up kanina, but you can disable it for ECR because of associated costs. Or example, you have a lot of container images. Or pwede naman daw po mag-select which images to scan or monitor. And for EC2, Amazon Inspector scans the packages or application installed, not a code analysis tool. So can you elaborate more of that, Sir Joshua?
Okay, good question. So usually when using containers and you will most likely have a lot of container images. So if you have immutable container images, you are forced to have multiple container images building on top of each other. So I believe in Amazon Inspector, although I haven't, I can't remember if I performed that before. I think there's an option so that the reports would be quieter or there's less reports. So we just need to check the documentation, but I believe there's that option. And then for Amazon Inspector scans the packages and applications installed. There are different things that Amazon Inspector checks. I believe that there's a different specialized code analysis tool. You can check Code Guru if you want to really check the code. Amazon Inspector checks your system. Amazon Inspector checks the server. So it's not limited to just the code. If you want to analyze code, you will need a different tool specialized on, let's say, hard-coded keys. So of course, let's say in your front-end code, there's the AWS key and secret. So if somebody inspects the code and then somebody steals the credentials there, if those set of credentials allow a user to perform super admin actions, then that's very dangerous, right? So again, so going back to your question, it's better to use a different tool because Amazon Inspector is more of like a holistic scanner for the environment or for the system.
All right. Thank you so much again, Sir Joshua. That's it for our question and answer portion. And if you have more questions, you may reach out to him on his social media platforms. So, Sir Joshua, will you let us know where to contact you or where to buy your book? Or do you have any upcoming activities that you want us to know?
If you want to if you want to check my book, just type in Amazon.com, machine learning with Amazon SageMaker cookbook. Yeah, you'll see it there. It's 700 to 800 pages, and the examples and solutions there are intentionally simplified so that you'll be able to learn things the the easy way. So you just type in the code, you run it. Oh, there you go. There's your machine learning model. And then in terms of talks, I'll have to organize things a bit. But I think that I have a talk
from your calendar.
in April. I can't remember. I'll have to check again. But yeah, there are a couple of other talks in the next couple of months. Yeah.
Okay, wait. Sorry, sir. Yung Alexa ko po ay nagsasalita.
Practitioner
Gusto
bootcamp
gusto ng
makeup
spotlight
class
ni Alexa.
starts in 10 minutes.
Ayan. So it's reminding me of something. Oh my God.
From your
Ayan, wait
calendar,
lang po.
AWS Cloud Practitioner
So how
bootcamp
about your
makeup
social media,
class
sir?
starts
Yung
in 10
social
minutes.
media.
LinkedIn. Yeah. So just type in Joshua Arvin Lat in LinkedIn, and then you can add me there. Wala pala akong slide, no? Wala pala akong slide na add me there sa.
All right. We will also chat Sir Joshua's LinkedIn po sa ating Zoom chat. Again, no, thank you po ulit, Sir Joshua. I'm really sorry for Alexa for interrupting your talk po. And we hope to see you as a speaker next time. So I believe that Sir Joshua has been our speaker in Community Ignite series for a lot of episodes na po. So thank you po so much. And you may, turn off your camera and, mag-rest na po kayo and everything. Ayan. Thank you po so much. So again, guys, thank you ulit tayo kay Sir Joshua. And along with the Community Ignite series, we also have more opportunities for free learning for you. So we have a lot of upcoming events then along with Sir Joshua. And yung mga upcoming events talaga namin with a lot of our partnered communities that will suit your interest and fit the skills you want to learn. Ayan. Are you guys ready to hear our upcoming events? Ayan. So our first upcoming event is for the AWS Restart. So I'll be waiting for my presentation. There you go. So are you guys ready for the AWS Restart program here in the Philippines? Uy, huwag kayo mag-thank you. Mamaya kayo mag-thank you. Ayan, thank you, Sir Joshua. Pero di pa tapos ang ating webinar. Ayan. So today, Edukasyon.ph is glad to be a part of AWS Restart program in the Philippines. So ano ba yung AWS Restart? So it is a 12-week virtual training program that covers fundamental AWS cloud skills as well as thank you, Rencho. May nag-thank you na sa akin, hindi pa ako tapos. Ayan, so it covers fundamental AWS cloud skills as well as practical career skills such as interviewing and resume writing. So it is to help individuals prepare for entry-level cloud roles. So this program helps prepare unemployed and underemployed individuals for new careers in technology through scenario-based exercises such as labs and courseworks about Linux, Python, networking, security, and relational database skills. Ayan, advanced daw tayo, sabi ni Sir Kemp. So with this, we are inviting you guys to enroll on this free AWS Restart program. You can actually apply on or before March 6th. Ayan, will there be batch 2 for AWS Restart? We will let you know. We will update you on our Facebook page. Ayan, so batch 2 na pala. We will let you know, guys. And of course, another one is we also have a challenge for you. So brought to you by Accenture Philippines and AWS Cloud Pilipinas. We are inviting you to sign up for our Tech Explore Innovation Challenge. So here's a question for you guys. How might we use AWS to help achieve any one of the following UN Sustainable Development Goals? So yun yung kailangan nyo sagutin sa itong challenge na to, and we cannot wait for what you have as an answer. So for more details about the challenge, please visit this link. I will chat it in the chat box. There you go. And now, have you always wondered what's it like to be a cloud practitioner? So dahil dyan, meron na tayong event, right? So AWS Cloud Pilipinas and eCloud Valley will be having a webinar on March 29, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. So it is about a day in the life of a cloud practitioner. So that will be on Zoom, and you may register here. Ayan, so register now here at this link, and you can also win a special and raffle prizes by clicking here. So it's all in the Zoom chat box and FB Live comment section. Next up, we have the Emerge Career Summit. It is a virtual career fair targeted at job seekers based in Southeast Asia to land their next career opportunity. So the opportunities on offer range from internships to full-time positions that are tech and non-tech in nature. So if you're keen on exploring potential roles or would like to speak to a recruiter, please join us at Emerge Career Summit. So the first day will be happening on March 29 also. And yung first day naman na yun is targeted on tertiary students for internships and fresh graduates positions. So yun yung March 29. Again, internship and fresh graduate positions. The next day is for early career to mid-career professionals. That is March 30. So dito sa Emerge Career Summit, you can complete skills modules, attend virtual skills workshops, and attend one-to-one interviews with employers. So kaya naman, if you're keen to participate in the Career Summit, please fill up this form to confirm your participation. Here it is again in the chat box. At ito pa, are you interested in earning as you level up as a developer through quests and tasks? Because Angel Hack is proud to share that they will be partnering with StackUp to bring you an exclusive peek at their latest Learn and Earn platform. So you can earn more than $500 as you tackle learning quests and follow guided bite-sized learning pathways. So kickstart your journey in learning all about the latest technologies and Web 3.0 and programming. So it includes, ito yung mga pwede nyo matutunan, no? It includes basics of blockchain, smart contract writing, prototyping your first decentralized application, introductory quest to Rust, and introductory quest to Python. So here's how to join. So step 1, you have to join StackUp Early Access Discord server. I'll be putting it again in the chat. Step 2, you have to head over to app.stackup.dev. Again, that's app.stackup.dev. And then step 3, you have to click sign up and enter PHL1019 as your early access code. And then after that, for the 4th step, let me just put it in the chat box so you can follow with me. So you're gonna have to create an account. And then for the last step, you're all set. You can now browse, complete quests, and earn rewards. So join StackUp as a player now and start earning as you learn. Yan. And then we have another one for you, but this time it's for International Women's Month. Again, happy International Women's Month sa ating mga magagandang ladies natin in this webinar. So brought to you by AWS Build Hers Plus is a month-long celebration by helping women level up their cloud skills through mentoring. So to our pretty ladies tonight, save the following dates. We'll be having Certified Cloud Practitioner Coffee Sessions and Solutions Architect Associate Coffee Sessions on March 6, 13, 20, and 27. Again, that's every Sunday for the month of March. So 6, 13, 20, and 27. So the CCP will be from 1 to 3 p.m., while the SAA will be conducted from 3 to 5 p.m. So nasa second session na tayo, kaya naman see you all on Sunday. And another one, marami po tayong events, guys. There will also be a study group for the Cloud Practitioner Certification Exam by AWS User Group Philippines. So it is all for free, but it has limited slots. So you have to reserve your slot for this 3-week study group. So it will be happening from March 13 to 27. And for more information, you may go or you may ask AWS User Group Philippines. I will send the invite link again in the chat. Make sure, guys, you're taking all the notes for our upcoming events dahil napakadami nating events for this month. And speaking for events this month, as you can see, no, we have partnered with a lot of tech communities and conduct events that really cater your field of interest. So sali na kayo. At before I tell you guys all about the feedback form, let's go to our monthly calendar. So I invite you guys naman to our events this March. So now it's March 10. Next Thursday, we're going to have our 32nd CIS. And then on March 19, along with Pizza Pie, we're going to have Vos Comprenes. Every time ina-announce ko to, lagi ang nabubulal. Vos Comprenes, ML and LLP for Dummies. I believe that's machine learning and natural language processing for dummies. And then the same day will be on with PWA Filipinas hosting static websites on a cloud storage. And then for March 24, we're going to have another CIS episode about building a secure AWS foundation. And then for the last CIS this month is on March 31, CIS number 34. And then we have another events by our friend or partnered communities, as you can see there kanina in the chat box. At ito na nga yung feedback form. We will flash it later. Let's just, promote again our social media accounts. So make sure to follow our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn to stay updated. Again, search nyo lang AWS Club Pilipinas, or you can scan the QR codes flashed on the screen. So, all right. So while waiting for the presentation to come back again, meron pa tayong pasabog, no? It is the Top Attendee Award. So in order to join the Top Attendee Award, dato lang siya kadali. So you just have to post your e-certificates. So don't forget to post your e-certificates, because by the end of the month, we'll be choosing the top attendee of the month, and the winner will receive AWS credits worth $20. So next slide na po tayo. Ayan, sa ating top attendee. Ayan. So again, no, we're gonna have a top attendee for the month of March. You will receive AWS credit worth $20. So compile nyo na yung e-certs nyo, post it with the hashtag Edukasyon.ph, hashtag AWS Club Pilipinas any day this month. Ayan. So don't forget to tag us on the post. So grabe, I have learned a lot from this 1-hour tech-driven webinar. Thank you again so much, Sir Joshua Arvindat, and we hope that you learned a lot in this episode. So, okay, wait. For the hashtag again, that is hashtag Edukasyon.ph. Ayan, mukhang ready na si Stephen mag-post ng kanyang mga e-certificates. Ayan, so dapat labanan niyo si Stephen. Tingnan natin kung siya nga ba ang top attendee for the month of March. So I want to take this opportunity to invite you all in the photo op. So open cam naman tayo dyan. So before you guys say goodbye and before you learn all about our feedback form, let's have a picture. So hello guys, hello kay Christian, kay Mark, kay Paula, kay Nico, kay Jessa, kay Giron, kay MC. Alright, this, paganda muna kayo dyan. Let's wait for others. Nasa na po si Sir Joshua Arvin. Ayan. Nasa na po ang ating speaker for tonight? Nandito pa po ba siya? Alright, wait. Ayan, wait. Ayan, mukhang umalis na po mukhang nauna na po si Sir Joshua. At wag tayong mag-alala guys, magpa-picture pa rin tayo. So, I'll be counting down to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Guys, smile! Okay, let's have another one naman. Okay, another one, guys. Make sure you can do another pose. I'll be doing the, Korean heart pose. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ayan, thank you so much. That wraps up our 31st episode of the Community Ignite series, Automated Vulnerability Management on AWS with Amazon Inspector. At ito na nga po yung e-certificate. Again, guys, you'll be able to get your e-certificate after you answer the feedback form. So we would love to hear your feedback. And to answer our CSAT form, please go to go.edukasyon.ph/CIS31 feedback. So please make sure to provide the correct email address. Again, this is the link. I'll be posting it in the chat box right here. Hello, thank you, Ren Joffrey. Ayan, so this is also for you to get an e-certificate. Again, please provide the correct email address para ma-send namin agad. Ayan, so thank you guys so much. Pagsubaybay sa amin, and I'm excited to see you all next week. Thank you rin Mark, thank you rin Ronel, and thank you Ryan. So don't forget to join again on the C Club community. So we have a community and we have a lot in store for you. And that's all because of our co-presenters. Thank you to AWS and AWS C Club Pilipinas. Ayan, thank you guys so much. And once again, I will see you all next week. God bless and stay safe. Yung recorded version nito will be posted on our YouTube channel and on the Facebook page as well. Ayan, thank you guys. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys, everyone. Thank you. God bless. Feedback form. All right, wait. Let me send again the feedback form in the chat box. Here you go. All right. Bye, guys.